All right, good evening. I call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Go ahead. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you and welcome to our special guest tonight. Do we have anybody for Citizens Forum? Okay, all right, then we are going to move on to our discussion items. We are going to skip agenda item 2 tonight if everybody agrees the athletics and activities. Janelle's sick tonight, so we can't take care of that one. Everybody good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, then we'll get started with 4K full day data.
So I have that for you tonight. So we have just a presentation that I'm going to run through with you on some 4K comparison data between the full day cohorts and the half day programs, and we'll look specifically at literacy, math. We'll talk about behavior. I don't have behavior data for you in here just because there's a lot of inconsistencies that we'll kind of talk through, and then some attendance data as well. So full day 4K started 4 years ago. This is our 4th year with it, so it would have been the 21-22 school year. And so how we have the data arranged is by kind of cohort. So we'll start with that first group of full day 4Kers who are now our current second graders, and we'll take a look at their literacy scores to start. So when they were in 4K, they took FastBridge early reading in the spring. And you can see kind of the key on the bottom. If students scored low risk, they would appear green. Some risk was yellow, and then high risk was red. And then we have it broken down into full day versus half day. So you can see the difference there. I think what you'll notice on most of these slides is that our full day 4K students are outperforming our half day 4K students, and that they're really hanging on to the learning as time progresses as well. And feel free to stop me if you have questions on any of these slides. So then as they moved to kindergarten the following year, they took a different assessment within FastBridge. It was A, reading and literacy. And you can see their scores throughout the whole year here. So it was fall, winter, and spring, full day versus half day. The blue got added to this, and that was just a rating of advanced on those tests as well. So again, you can kind of see that our full day students were outperforming the half day.
So Nikki, quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is the curriculum the same, like the volume of curriculum, or is it safe to say it's half of the curriculum for a half day?
I would say they get the same thing for sure, but then the full day kids get extra practice with some of the skills.
Okay, thank you.
Then they moved to first grade. Here they took FastBridge early reading, and again you can see the comparisons across the board. And then as second grade students, we switched to Ames Web Plus. So ORF is oral reading fluency, and then there's also a composite score there as well. And this is the fall data from this year. The rating levels changed a little bit. That dark blue is well above average, light blue above average, green average, yellow below average, and red well below average. Any questions about this first cohort with just literacy data?
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah. Can you tell us what does a test look like for a 4K student?
A lot of it is one-on-one with the teacher. So I was actually over at Glenbrook helping test some of those students, and so there might be on one of the tests that they just took this winter, there were 4 pictures, and I would ask the students which picture starts with K, and so they would have to then point to a picture. Another test that I know they took this winter, they had about a minute to name as many uppercase and lowercase. They were mixed on the page, and they just had to go through and say what the letter was.
So it's like a conversation with the teacher opposed to something on like an iPad?
Yes,
okay.
yes, yeah, and as they get a little bit older, like some of the tests in kindergarten are still that one-on-one, first grade still has some one-on-one, but as they get into second grade, they are on an iPad, typically in a small group with their teacher. so.
Thank you.
How do you guys feel about the test scores, I guess, in the ratings? Because it looks like they do make up some ground between 4K, second or first grade, yeah, second grade, yeah, there's some at or well below average, but, I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I would say just personally here at Fairview, like we're seeing, previously before full day, I would say we saw kids come into us with a gap for kindergarten. And that gap just kind of compounded itself, and finally by fifth grade, things were closed for those kids and they were on track. I would say with the addition of full day, we're not seeing that gap and they're really just flying now.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
So then we'll move into math scores for that first cohort. So as 4K students, they took the FastBridge early math, and you can see the difference there. Then as kindergarten students, they took FastBridge A math. And I would say when you look at math, there's not as big of a contrast. And I think partially that's because 4K is really trying to hone in on what they want to do for math. There's more of a literacy, oral language, vocabulary focus in 4K, I would say, than with math. So that's something that they're still continuing to explore. I know at one point they piloted stepping stones. They didn't feel that that was appropriate for the 4K kids at that point in time. Sarah Bovey here does what's called counting collection, so it's a lot of like one-to-one correspondence with counting different objects and manipulating numbers that way. Then they moved into first grade. They took FastBridge early math, and again, you can see the difference. And then second grade, we're to Ames Web Plus again, and this is their fall data on that composite score. Then behavior, I said we would talk a little bit about that. So we didn't pull any, well, we started to pull behavior data, but it was just kind of messy. And so we decided not to include that tonight, just because it's really hard to compare that data building to building, site to site. Our 4K teachers typically don't use like a write-up system at all. It's really teaching the behavior in 4K. And right now this year as a district, we're really working hard to get consistent with how we report behaviors, how we document behaviors, what constitutes a major versus a minor, all of that. So I think as we move forward, we'll have that data. We just don't have kind of an apples to apples comparison for you at this point. I can speak to Fairview, and I know we do a lot of writing up, not necessarily our 4K students, but we document minors all the time because we really use that to guide our tier 1 instruction for behavior in the building, where other buildings maybe aren't writing up that much. So it looks like it's not comparable, I guess, is kind of how I would say it at this point. Questions about that at all? And then also with some of the sizes too, as you would drill down, I think we really wanted to be intentional about protecting the identity of kids, so we might have only had like a group of 3 kids and we just wanted to protect their identity and not overshare that way. And then attendance data, it looks pretty consistent across the board, so really not finding a huge difference there whether they were full day or half day. And so this shows from 4K all the way to second grade. And then our second cohort of full day 4Kers are our current first graders. So we'll start with literacy again. Here was their 4K literacy, FastBridge early reading. Kindergarten, FastBridge early reading. That test I believe switched, or one of those switched, so it was early reading for both 4K and kindergarten this year. And then the oral reading fluency this year as first graders. Math scores for them, they did the early math as 4K in FastBridge, early math again as kindergartners. And then the early numeracy in Ames Web this year.
So it's interesting, both cohorts for both literacy and math show once they go from FastBridge to Ames Web, an increase in the below average. Do we understand why? I mean, obviously the test changed.
Yeah.
Can we pin down what changed that would contribute to that?
Well, we know that they changed the norms as well.
Okay.
So You know, now we really can't compare apples to oranges because it's a different,
Mhm.
it's testing similar things, but it tested in a different way and it scores it differently and has different cut scores.
So they set the cut scores though, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they set them and they tell us, you know, it's the 25th percentile, which is what they would consider needing support and needing a personal reading plan.
Okay, so then we probably saw an increase in how many students needed help, right, per the guidelines?
Yeah, because the last 2 years, we were following all of our students, and
Mhm.
once we knew this legislation was in effect. And so, you know, I think like by the end of the year, we were thinking 125 kids might need to be on personal reading plans. Well, when we gave this assessment in the fall, and you didn't have to give it in the fall, but we chose like, let's work out the bugs, let's get used to this, let's
Mhm.
have our kids experience it, we're not going to do Fast Bridge. We were over 300, I think it was 360, 370 kids needing a plan,
Mhm.
compared to what, you know, we were experiencing before. Now, our teachers did a great job, we really saw a decrease. We're at 21% of our students needed an actual plan, which before it was much higher. And we hope that obviously continues, with the springtime.
Okay,
But
thank you.
And then we didn't pull attendance data for that group just because it was very consistent again too. So then the third cohort, and I would say, you know, this would be 3 years into implementation. So we kind of built full day 4K from the ground up, looked at different schedules. Sarah Bovey really took the lead on that, and here's what we think the kids need, and we adjusted along the way. But I would say by year 3, right, is really when you start to get that total implementation, and is this going well? And I think you're gonna be surprised by the data that you see coming up here. So this was them as 4K students, so these are current kindergartners, where previously we saw, you know, a lot of kids in that some risk or high risk. Here they're all low risk, within that 3rd year of implementation. So this, again, was Fast Bridge early reading. And then here they are as kindergartners this fall with Ames Web. So again, no kids below or well below average on that. And then their math scores look very similar, so 100% at low risk there as 4K, and just a small percentage that are a little bit below average when it comes to math. And then we did pull attendance too, just to show you another group for attendance, and again, very similar across the board that way. So that's what I have for data to share with you. Questions that you might have?
Just one more, so the cohorts that you mentioned, did they stay intact the whole time?
So, it's interesting because the kids that can come out here for full day are from across the district, so,
Okay.
I actually.
So is there any mixing of data in here, or did we?
There are some, I think,
Okay.
where kids have left the district, because I think when I looked at that first cohort, we had 22 kids initially, and I think, when we were pulling data, there were 18 of them still
Okay,
in the district,
so not a big number. Okay.
But, I mean, what they had to do was take the list of those kids, keep them together in EduClimber, and then she had to pull the other 260 kids and run that data consistently, so, because they're spread across the district. I mean, what would you say,
Most,
3/4 of them
yeah.
are probably here, but
Yep,
Glenbrook,
Glenbrook is
sometimes
the one
Sunnyside, we've had
really
Hillcrest,
shines
and we've had
inside.
Lenoy too, all come all out here.
Right, okay.
Have a full day is kind of an intense day, especially for a young 4K'er. Have you gotten feedback, and what are your perceptions of how these 4K'ers are handling a full day in a classroom?
yeah, I think they do great, I really do, so, they do have a rest time in the afternoon, typically after their lunch and recess. I would say at the beginning of the year, that's definitely needed. By this time of year, towards maybe a little bit closer to the end of the year, they're not resting. Like, they are just up and doing stuff, and they don't feel like they need a nap time. I don't think we've pushed too hard on our kids to like wear them out. I don't see huge behaviors here. I would say if anything, the kids coming out of full day 4K are ready for kindergarten and seem ready. There's not a big transition where they're learning, just what school is and how to behave in school. I think the full day with the specials helps break things up too a little bit. They get a taste of art, music, so it's a little different than just their center time when they're exploring music. They're actually spending time with the music teacher here and getting some curriculum in that way too. So I would say that the demands are not too high on them.
Can you take us through a day, kind of the schedule?
Yes, I can, and I actually
Good.
got something for you guys so you can see what that mine looks like. Sure. So I asked Sarah Poutz, who is one of our 4K teachers at Hillcrest, to provide her half-day schedule.
Thank you.
And then Sarah Bovee to provide her full-day schedule for us. So, do you wanna start with half-day? Do you have a pretty good understanding?
I think we're
Like, the
gonna have
half-day
to.
one is the first one. I think where you might have some questions is it says group time, right? So, within that, she shared, like, that's when, that first group time, they're doing a greeting, they're going through their schedule for the day, the pledge, some movement songs, a story. The second group time is where they would get into social thinking, handwriting without tears. And then if you look at Mrs. Bovie's schedule, so you see they get here in the morning, they do SMART, which is a lot of movement and training your brain in different ways. They have a morning meeting, daily news, they do some shared writing at that time typically. She moves into social thinking, some handwriting, fine motor things. They do have a special 1 day a week in the morning, up a little bit higher. And then they move into their choice or play time. And I think the thing to emphasize within choice and play is that that really is learning too. It's purposeful play. And then they have, later in the week, they have some other specials there. They do about a half an hour of math in small groups. That's where they're doing some of those counting collections and one-to-one correspondence. Then they move into lunch, and I think even with that, like it says in the classroom, we really follow the WEML standards for 4K, and we use Eckers as a guide too. And so part of that is really kids learning how to serve themselves and just some of those self-help skills that they're gonna need, and how to socialize and carry on a conversation with an adult and with each other. So I feel like sometimes we look at our 4K rooms and we're like, oh, it's just a lot of play, or it's just this or that, but there's so much learning going on too for them that you don't even realize it. They have recess, rest time, they do another like read aloud, some whole group literacy, some small group literacy. They have another opportunity for some choice and play, and then it's packing up and a second recess, and then it's time to go home. So it is a busy day for them, but I think it's well broken up, and again, I think the afternoon kind of mirrors like practicing of those skills that maybe were taught more intentionally in the morning, so.
For the full days of breakfast thing, they all
They're-
participate in that?
That's only if they need it. They're
Okay.
offered the breakfast here at school like the other kids, so
What about half day? Do they get that same option or no?
they do not,
Okay.
I don't believe.
What was the feedback from families?
Honestly, I honestly think they love it. I guess we haven't really like surveyed families, out here to see specific feedback. I haven't heard anything as far as, boy, I really wish you had half day out here too. I think the nice thing about 4K is the district offers both options, so families can pick what best fits their child. We know that not every child's ready for full day. And we have had 1 or 2 students where it just, full day was too much for them, and so then it's moving them to a half day section and working with the family to get them replaced. So.
Any other questions?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all that
Thank
data,
you.
appreciate it. All right, then we will move on to Mark with the 25-26 budget.
All right, so it's February workshop is the first time where we look at next year's budget, which is an 8-month process, right? So we'll go over it. What tonight is a general list of assumptions and norms for planning, so that as soon as the March meeting, when things come for approval, we know a general picture. Again, state budget isn't set, so for the scouts in the room, I manage the budget on a daily basis, but what your parents and your neighbors do is they elect these individuals in the front of the room, and they make decisions, and then they also elect at the state and federal level, which impacts our funding. So if you take anything away today, know that your parents have a say in what's decided, and that funds your teachers and your playground balls and everything else that you do on a daily basis. So what I do is help guide and give advice on what's going on in the daily, so that they can make proper decisions for you. So the big one is our revenue limit, which will be set by the state. Again, I haven't heard any interpretation other than what EPI requested, so that's the best assumption at this time. 2 lines for open enrollment. All we know at this time is our seniors are moving on and our 4Kers are becoming kindergartners. I'll work with Dana as applications come in so we get an estimate on changes there, but we don't know anything. It's just the application just opened the other day. We have to make up for our last bit of ESSER funding, which we utilized last year. We know what CPI came in at. I believe that's an April agenda item for setting 25, 26 salaries, and what payroll-based benefits will have an impact on that. Health insurance we have scheduled for the March workshop for additional information. 4K has been talked about the decrease in community side payments and the increase in staffing. One small change that we already know is we have to sign on for our buses for next year, replacing 3 full-size buses, so that's been already agreed upon. So where we sit today is, right now, we're in an okay spot, just knowing these items. Again, a lot is going to change and be decided over the next 8 months. So, and then I just showed, fund balance as a percentage, still around that $10 million number at 17%, so a healthy fund balance as well.
Mark, I have a quick question. Where you have bus acquisition, it's $65,000. I can't imagine that 3 buses are $65,000. So how does that work?
This year we bought two buses and a shorter bus, so that's the difference. So
Okay.
the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten away with not replacing 3 full. We need to every once in a while throw in the 3 full so that our fleet doesn't age out. So
Gotcha.
that's the difference. No
Okay.
buses are.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Much more expensive than that.
So some of the, these are all, well, not all, some of them are assumptions, right? How did we come to the health insurance placeholder assumption?
Yeah, so health insurance is 2 components. One, just based on a CPI number of 3%, you can assume that health insurance companies are gonna raise just their cost to provide 3%. And right now, we're hovering at that between 2 to 5% overage this year. A lot can change, people can add on, drop off. That's just, if I had to completely guess at what our renewal's going to come in at based on, we have 6 months of data, I would say they're gonna come in at that 5 to 7% renewal rate.
Okay.
But that will be an act, broad and broad, presented in March. They should have enough data at that point to say what is all gonna be impacted, but again, just a placeholder right now.
And again, just for the benefit of everyone, so you're showing a shortfall this year of 436,500, right?
Yes.
And we're showing that's gonna come out of the fund balance, dropping it by the same amount, right?
Yes.
So with the monthly forecasting that you're doing, when is the next time you're gonna give us an update on where we're at with your best assumption on the forecast end of year target?
I think we're scheduled for March.
March,
Or,
okay.
sorry, April.
I think April, you're right, I think it's
So
April.
it'll be based on March actuals presented in April, and that
Okay.
would be to prep for year end.
Okay.
In the past, you've discussed kind of what, you said that we still have that healthy fund balance. Where do you generally target for our fund balance to be
Yeah,
at a
so
comfort level?
Between 15 and 20, the board has a policy not to go below 15. If you're going out for a bond issuance or anything, the last time we were up around that 20. Really, our fund balance has been increasing, but so have expenses as we've kept up with salaries, our biggest category. So I think we're in a good place. We don't short-term borrow, we haven't in 7 or 8 years, which is another guiding factor, to make sure we have cash on hand. So I'm comfortable at 17.
with the health insurance and our stop loss, do you know if Brown and Brown does stop loss shopping? If we look for other stop loss providers,
Yeah, so
not,
stop loss is bid every year,
okay,
so, yes, they do.
okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Open enrollment. What are you using for that factor, Mark?
Yeah, so what I do, so an open enrollment revenue is I take the seniors that are going out, take that off, and then your 4Kers who become kindergartners go from a 0.6 to a 1.0. So that's the difference in that. So the reason we're coming out ahead this year is we have a large senior class that is open enrolled out.
Okay.
So we lose those 37 students, that's the assumption. The hard part is that conversion from 5th to 6th or 8th to 9th, you know, and just natural people moving, changing jobs, you know, whatever. So eventually we'll use applications, and not everyone turns in an application, proceeds with the process, but we get a general idea of how many, if you turn in an application, how many will go forward with it.
Okay.
So,
That's helpful, thank you.
mhm.
Not everything else.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? No. All right, very good, then we will move on to our second citizens forum. Anybody want to speak? All right, next business meeting will be February 19th, back at the Barb McKeefrey Room. We will have Curtis from Glenbrook talk us through the AGR reporting. And I think we'll have a few other things we'll add yet too, but that's it for right now. That's all we have tonight. You picked a good meeting to come to. Short one.
All right, I make a move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Good night, everybody.